Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Dan Other, and I'm the Executive Director of the American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists. Today's webinar is entitled Engineering for One Planet. I'm joined by Stephanie Harrington, the Director of Constituent Relations at ABET, and together we will serve as co-moderators. Stephanie will introduce our speaker today, and during the presentation, you'll be able to submit questions by using the QA icon on the bottom of your screen. Before we get started, I'd like to say a few words. As we begin, let me offer a special thanks to our patrons. Those are the firms and utilities that financially support the work of the Academy. We are grateful for their support. On the next slide, you'll notice that we have a special thanks to offer today. In particular, we would like to say thank you to ABET for sponsoring today's webinar. ABET and the Academy partner in the process of accrediting the educational programs which prepare the next generation of environmental engineers, environmental engineering technologists, and environmental scientists. The Academy is grateful for ABET's support of today's webinar. Thank you, ABET. Now, on the next slide, I'd like to share a little bit of details that are helpful for orienting us all as an audience. Today, the Academy is fortunate to have a program that spans the activity of two of our sponsoring organizations. That is the Association of Environmental Engineering and Science Professors, or AEESP, as well as the American Society for Engineering Education, or ASEE. Now, to keep us from getting confused, we'll refer to these as the Academy, the Association, and the Society. And I have here excerpts from websites of all three organizations. And I just want to highlight where these organizations have an intersection in their shared responsibility for training up the next generation of environmental engineers and scientists. The Academy provides board certification to advanced professionals who qualify through experience and testing. But as you'll note, we also participate along with ABET in accrediting universities. The Academy identifies individuals known as program evaluators who go out and visit universities to look at their accredited materials and be able to offer recommendations for ABET to consider. The second group, the association, also known as AEESP, improves education and research programs for about 700 faculty across the United States and around the world. And there is a particular focus in the association on encouraging graduate education. The third sponsoring organization, or the second sponsoring organization we have highlighted here, is the American Society for Engineering Education, or the Society. Now, this is more than 300 faculty that are focused on teaching environmental engineering. That's the Environmental Engineering Division within ASEE. And they work together to advance the scholarship of teaching and learning, particularly to advance both graduate and undergraduate education. And so we are very grateful for having a shared platform here so that we can talk about the work of the Academy, the Association, and the Society, sharing the responsibility for training up the next generation. Now, training is, of course, essential to forming the basic knowledge, skills, and attitudes of graduates from programs of higher education. But as we see in the next slide, it doesn't stop there. Individuals who are trained up actually will go on to work. And as we look at the slide where we see material from the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics, we see details about what it means to be an environmental engineer in practice. In fact, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics have identified that there are 50,000 individuals in the United States that call themselves environmental engineers, and nearly 75,000 individuals who call themselves environmental scientists. And I want to look at this definition, the first paragraph here. This is the standard occupational description of environmental engineering, and this was written in 2018. Environmental engineers research, design, plan, or perform engineering duties in the prevention, control, and remediation of environmental hazards using various engineering disciplines. Now, just this September 2023, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics updated their definition of environmental engineering. And the updated definition, now it's not that we don't do the things that are in this first paragraph, but our definition as a profession has continued to evolve. And now we describe environmental engineers as using the disciplines of engineering in developing solutions to problems of planetary health. On the next slide, I want to compare and contrast a little bit. This is not to talk negatively about what engineers are doing. This is to show how environmental engineering is a leader in planetary health. These are the current definitions of a variety of different engineering disciplines. Of course, environmental engineers developing solutions to problems of planetary health is who we are and what we're talking about. And we can contrast that or compare that to some other definitions. Civil engineers, planning, designing, and supervising construction and maintenance of buildings and infrastructure. Electrical engineers, designing and testing the manufacture of electrical equipment. You'll notice a difference here. Environmental engineering, yes, we'll design systems. Yes, we'll work on problems, but we're doing them in a context of planetary health. And that's why today's presentation is so timely. With that, I want to turn it over to Stephanie Harrington. Stephanie is the Director of Constituent Relations at ABET. She earned her BS in Civil Engineering from UVA and her Master's in Civil Engineering from UT Arlington. She's been promoting STEM education for 25 years, including on the faculty at Catholic University, as well as the Director of Marketing at the American Society for Engineering Education. Stephanie, we are grateful to you for joining us today. Would you like to tell us a little bit about ABET and introduce Cindy?
Thank you, Dan. That was a lovely introduction. I am absolutely delighted to be here from ABET to introduce this webinar. As Dan said, I'm Stephanie Harrington, and my primary job at ABET is to work with the core of ABET, which is our 35 member societies, of which the Academy is one. If you're not familiar with ABET, ABET is a quality assurance organization that focuses on STEM disciplines. And with all of our partnerships, including our member societies, we help ensure quality STEM graduates. ABET has an incredibly broad reach, affecting 200,000 graduates each year. And on the next slide, I have some statistics. And this past year, actually, we're at 920 institutions, and we are growing at about programs at about 3 to 5% a year. ABET accreditation is a voluntary peer-reviewed process, and we rely on over 2,300 evaluators worldwide through our member societies, again, of which you all are one. On the next slide, I'd like to talk about a little bit about our partnership with the Academy. As Dan mentioned, ABET accredits environmental engineering technology, environmental science in about 113 programs globally. The Academy's involvement with ABET drives the criteria for these programs. You all have members on our leadership, and most important, or very importantly, is you provide our evaluators. I put a little note in here. If you're not already an evaluator, we would strongly encourage you to look into becoming involved. We do need you, and you can reach me at the email that's on the slide. We do have recent growth in environmental science programs, not just environmental engineer, and we do urge anyone at one of these programs to look into accreditation if you haven't already done so. There's also more information on that at abet.org, or you can reach out to me. So our work with the Academy is helping to promote sustainability in all the disciplines that ABET accredits. On the next slide, you can see that ABET has really strengthened its commitment to sustainability by joining the UN Global Compact, which requires its participants to be committed to the UN's 10 principles and dedicated to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. ABET is thrilled to be a part of this webinar to support these goals. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker today. I've gotten to know Cindy Anderson recently with her work with ABET through Engineering for One Planet. Her background is incredibly impressive, most recently as co-author of the EOP, the Engineering for One Planet Framework, as well as the companion teaching guides for engineering courses. Just as a side note, I'm actually building a whole new course myself on Intro to Engineering and Foundations of Engineering Design next semester around the EOP Framework. Cindy is the founder and CEO of Alula Consulting, which is focused on innovation and sustainability research, as well as curriculum projects for academic institutions, nonprofits, government, and corporations. Cindy's impact has been tremendous, not just with EOP, but she's taught thousands of people over the years through different courses and workshops around the world in biology, sustainability, and biomimicry. Cindy was previously the founding director of Faculty and Sustainability Initiatives at VentureWell, where she oversaw projects for NSF, the Bill and Melinda Gates, Kern Family, and Lemelson Foundations. She was also founding director of the Sustainable Design Program at the Minneapolis College of Art and Design for 8 years, and prior to that, the founding director of university education at the Biomimicry Institute. She's also been a field biologist and traveled around the world studying the nesting and foraging ecology of seabirds. Her master's is from Oregon State. She has a master's of education from Griffith University in Australia and a bachelor's in biology from the University of Guelph in Ontario. It is my pleasure to introduce Cindy Anderson.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I really appreciate that very generous introduction and long. I'm sorry about that. It's such a pleasure to be here representing the Lemelson Foundation and to be able to talk about the Engineering for One Planet, or EOP initiative, and to share about some of our resources that are available for free online. Before I jump into the details of my presentation, I just want to say an enormous thank you for the invitation to be here today. Thank you to the American Academy of Environmental Engineers and Scientists for inviting me to speak. And really special thanks to Marissa and co-host Dan for all of you've done to make this possible. And a big thank you to ABET for sponsoring this webinar, and thanks to Stephanie for co-hosting. And thank you to each of you that are here on the line today. I see there's around 80 of you on the line, and hopefully many more will watch this later. Just thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedules and lives to be here today, or whenever you happen to see this in the future. So a quick agenda overview. I really want to touch just a tiny bit about why sustainability and why now. I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here with environmental engineers, but hopefully for those that maybe are less familiar that watch this later, it will be helpful. I will give you an EOP overview, mention some of our EOP resources, and share how you can get involved. And then hopefully we'll have a lot of time for conversation and Q&A. So Stephanie shared a lot about my professional life that's been focused on sustainability over the past 25 years. But I'm sure, like many of you and your students and your employees, I'm also very personally passionate about sustainability. I'm an avid hiker and backpacker. This is a picture from Mount Rainier National Park that I took this summer. You can see the glacier at the top here. I'm also a skier, a gardener, a sailor, and I just absolutely love adventuring outside on our fascinating and gorgeous planet. Life on Earth is beautiful and it's resilient, but it's also fragile. Through my work with in the Arctic and the Antarctic, as well as living in Montana, which is a wildfire state, that's also home to Glacier National Park, I've experienced firsthand the impacts of climate change over the past 2 decades. I've seen glaciers rapidly retreating, snowfall and snowpack declining, which leads to extended wildfire seasons with greater severity. I need more water to grow my food, and sailing has become more dangerous with increased frequency and intensity of storms. And frankly, I consider these to be really first world problem examples. I'm not facing losing my home, my land, my food, my community, or my family due to flooding, drought, hurricanes, pollution, lack of biodiversity. But many millions of people around the world are. Ultimately, I'm very optimistic about what we can do as a community of concerned citizens about our environment and society. And I'm even more hopeful about what sustainability trained engineers and scientists can do to affect change. But the truth is, there's a lot of bad news out there. I'm not going to read through this long list of big changes that are happening due to unprecedented levels of carbon dioxide and methane in our atmosphere that's been leading to climate change that has now become a climate crisis. I'm sure you're very aware of many of these things. But a couple of things that just jump out at the top are that our global temperature is rising. 2023, the World Economic Forum just released an article 2 days ago saying that 2023 is predicted to be our hottest year on record. 2020 was the hottest year on record prior to that, and 2016 the year before. This is increasing in frequency. And as I mentioned before, glaciers are retreating, snow covers decreasing, extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, and species biodiversity is declining. Currently, about 2 million species are predicted to go to extinct in my lifetime. This is probably not a lot of news to you, but really, what is the EOP initiative and how can it help us face these growing social and environmental sustainability challenges that we face today and into the future? I'm going to share a few key aspects about the initiative, the who, the why, the what, the how, and how you can get involved. There's also a lot more information on our EOP website. This URL code, or sorry, not URL, the URL is there for the engineerforOnePlanet.org website, as well as a QR code for you to go directly to the website. And I will be sharing more QR codes throughout the presentation, so you can go directly to specific web pages and documents directly. So what is EOP? The vision of EOP is that sustainability will become a core tenet of the engineering profession. To do that, the EOP is seeking to transform engineering education to ensure that all engineers have fundamental sustainability skills. So no big feat, right? Just change all of engineering education. I think we can do it together. EOP is a platform for change that provides shared resources and connections to help people find opportunities to make change and to learn from each other so that the changes can be accelerated together. Just to point out a little bit about our EOP logo, it's meant to depict two different ideas. One is about the interdependent elements of our planetary ecosystem, including water and animals and plants, and earth and air. And the second idea being, as fundamentally important, the interrelated and diverse people, organizations, and efforts it takes to transform engineering education. I wanted to pause here and show this really quick 3-minute video. I think it gives a really nice overview to EOP and introduces you to some of our community members. So I'm going to go ahead and share that with you now.
Sustainability is a concept for a different model of living on the planet.
How do we create a material reality that allows us not just to enjoy the present, but also to leave something for future generations to come?
Every decision that we make ultimately has this ripple effect.
We have to change the way that we think about the world. We have to change the way that we design things in the world.
Designers and engineers make the things that we use to live life. And so I think it's about embedding the idea of sustainability in engineering so that it's ultimately synonymous.
Students want to learn more about sustainability. They want to understand how we can possibly address climate change.
Engineering for One Planet has a vision that sustainability will be a core tenet of the profession. So we're working to transform engineering education to equip all students with skill sets and mindsets to ensure that engineers are able to protect and improve our planet and our lives.
I think sustainability in general is the issue of our lifetime, and STEM graduates are going to be the ones that are really going to have to do the heavy lifting.
I prepare engineers for the professional world, and it is important that they are ready for the challenges.
So that sustainability becomes a way of thinking for them. It becomes like a habit for them in the way they approach all innovation, development, coding.
Engineering for One Planet is transformative because it really embeds the principles of sustainability across all engineering disciplines, helps create engineers that know how to use those principles in creating the products and businesses of today and tomorrow.
EOP is bringing to the table everyone really that has a voice and an interest. So students are key, administrators, professors, but it's also very key to have industry there to showcase that there is a workforce need for this as well.
I think increasingly we're seeing industry having a demand for engineers who are specifically working in the area of sustainability. But we also recognize that we need everybody thinking about those kinds of design decisions with the sustainability mindset.
The EOP framework aligns really nicely with the concept of sustainable issues in our criteria, the items that students ought to be exposed to when they're undergraduate programs.
The EOP framework gives institutions, individual faculty members, a roadmap to start with to see pervasive transformation of the engineering curriculum.
Designing, engineering something is an innately hopeful and optimistic endeavor.
There is true power in enough people actually coming to the table with these are the tangible ways that we can change it to make this better. Engineering for One Planet isn't just about changing courses, it's about changing the course of engineering.
I believe that in the future, what we call sustainable engineering is just going to be good engineering.
Great. So, who catalyzed Engineering for One Planet? Where did this come from? For those that are not familiar with the Lemelson Foundation, it is a private family foundation that was started nearly 30 years ago by Jerry Lemelson, who was one of the most prolific independent American inventors with over 600 patents to his name. And the Lemelson Foundation is based in Portland, Oregon. The Lemelson Foundation's mission is improving lives through invention. The foundation believes that most successful companies are and will be those that build in sustainability from the start. The foundation has been committed to sustainability for many years and worked with the long-term grantee partner VentureWell to catalyze Engineering for One Planet, or EOP as we call it. Although Lemelson and VentureWell catalyze EOP, hundreds of stakeholders across sectors have shaped EOP's vision, goal, and collaborative actions, including our resources. We don't own EOP, no one owns EOP, we're giving away resources and grants, and the only agenda we're trying to push is to improve our world. EOP is here to make it easier for you to bring sustainability into engineering education and engineering profession. So I wanted to just highlight that we also didn't do this alone from the beginning. The EOP initiative also engaged a diverse advisory group during its 2-year launch phase from 2020 to 2022. We had advisors that included students and faculty and professionals from industry, professional associations, nonprofits, as well as the Lemelson Foundation. So why do we need to change engineering education? It might be pretty obvious by now since I talked about the bad news at the top of this webinar. But really, it's because sustainability is an imperative for improving life on Earth. And what does that have to do with engineering? Engineers, as you know, build, design, code, all of the things that we buy, we consume, and we throw away on our planet. So all engineering activity can positively or negatively impact our planet. But not all engineers are trained in sustainability, unfortunately. Not only that, but sustainability is an imperative for our youth. They're demanding action on sustainability because their health and futures depend on it, and they're making their educational and career choices accordingly. Sustainability is also an imperative for industry, not only to attract those amazing youth, but also because it's the right thing to do. And really importantly, because it impacts the bottom line. The demand for sustainability skills will soon outpace the supply in many industries. So why do we need to change? We talked about engineering generally, but engineering education has a massive reach and scope in the US and around the world. In the US alone, we graduate over 140,000 undergraduate engineers each year, but less than 1% of those are from environmental engineering, where they're more likely to be exposed to sustainability concepts and tools. So consider the positive impact that we can have by preparing all of our engineers to face our growing environmentalist and social sustainability challenges. So if sustainability is an imperative and it's required by ABET accreditation, why isn't it integrated across all of engineering education already? Before we launched EOP in 2020, we conducted research to figure out why and what was going on. For this research, we conducted surveys, interviews, and workshops with hundreds of stakeholders from across sectors, and we also with other experts on curricular transformation. And we ended up generating these 3 different white papers that share the results of the early research, and they're available on our EOP website. But they really were the foundation to launching the EOP initiative. We heard many reasons about why this hasn't been happening already at scale, many which I've listed here, but key reasons that we heard over and over again was the engineering curriculum is too full already. Faculty don't have the time, the resources, or the knowledge to teach sustainability yet. And when faculty do make changes to their courses, they often fizzle out because it isn't broadly supported from leadership or engineering profession as a whole. So we've decided we really need to look at the question differently. So how do we go from isolated efforts to change engineering courses to changing the course of engineering? How do we make sustainability a fundamental tenet of engineering as a whole? And what we've come up with lots of conversations and lots of research is that the answer is that we need to have systems change. We need a systems change approach. The engineering education system is highly complex. Different actors hold different pieces of the puzzle. That's why EOP seeks to enable everyone to contribute in ways that make sense for them and in their roles. And because the system has perpetuated worse outcomes for some more than others, we need to prioritize diversity, equity, and inclusion, and justice in the work we do to change the system. So EOP was not the first sustainability effort. It's not the only effort, and it will not be the last effort involved to bring sustainability into engineering education. EOP was a result of discussions with hundreds of stakeholders to understand the existing landscape, as well as the hurdles and the opportunities, in order to create an initial roadmap that addressed priorities and gaps. Those conversations yielded a lot of insights about bottom-up versus top-down approaches to make systems change that were needed to transform engineering education. Some of the examples that come up are from the bottom up is that we need to support and listen to faculty and student change agents. Faculty need time and support to make these changes. They often need training in how to teach sustainability because it wasn't part of their engineering education. And these bottom-up efforts need to lead to broader curricular reform, not just an elective being changed here or there. Sustainability fundamentally needs to be woven into required engineering courses at all levels. And from the top down, we need industry to be involved because they hire engineers and they influence what is taught in higher education. We need accreditation bodies to require that engineering students learn about sustainability, which thankfully ABET does. We need recognition and awards for individuals and institutions that are influential in making change. We also need promotion and tenure practices that support faculty who are working to bring sustainability into the curriculum. This is why academic leaders like presidents and engineering deans are so fundamentally important to this work. They can support change, they institute missions, strategies, funding, and policies that can prioritize sustainability in engineering education. So we took all of this information and have developed basically 3 interrelated approaches in order to foster curricular transformation. We're working, number 1, to develop and share teaching resources through community feedback and vetting in diverse courses and programs. We're providing funding to faculty to change efforts and to foster change efforts and to support faculty in capacity building. And we're activating and supporting collaboration among diverse stakeholders across sectors. So I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about each of these different 3 approaches that we're using. So the first being the community co-created resources. So you have heard a little bit from Stephanie. She mentioned the EOP framework in my intro. You can go ahead and scan this QR code or go to our website under resources and find the EOP framework. You can download it for free. The EOP framework is a vetted menu of sustainability-focused learning outcomes across 9 different topic areas. It was launched in 2020 originally, with input from nearly 100 stakeholders from across sectors through an open source commenting period. We resolved over 400 comments in order to create this framework, and we tested it with 5 different pilot schools over 2 years from 2020 to 2022. The non-topic areas include sustainability-focused and leadership-focused competencies. Those are systems thinking, environmental literacy, responsible business and economy, social responsibility, environmental impact assessment, material selection, design, critical thinking, and communication and teamwork. In 2022, we revised the EOP framework. We used 3 different mechanisms to collect feedback from stakeholders. First, we collected feedback from the 5 pilot schools that I'll tell you more about in a minute. And we did that through one-on-one interviews. We also supported an open commenting period again for the first half of 2022 to collect public feedback. And then we had 100 experts come together from across sectors, all of them working in the sustainability field, to weigh in on the framework during an NSF-supported EOP Scaling for Impact workshop that was hosted in July 2022. And through this process, we received over 600 comments, which were integrated into the revised EOP framework. I won't go through all the changes that we made, but I just do want to highlight that we identified 8 major areas to refine the framework, including really integrating more social sustainability. We were really heavily focused on environmental sustainability prior to that. We revised the learning outcomes to be measurable and aligned with Bloom's taxonomy, for example. So for the revised framework, we also introduced easier to understand icons for both the APET alignment as well as the UN SDG mapping. So you'll find the orange circle from ABET that you're probably aware of, and a number in parentheses that identifies which of the 7 student outcomes that are identified in criterion 3 in ABET's work for each of the different student learning outcomes identified in the framework. So for example, in my top paragraph here, this is an example of a student learning outcome, and you can see an orange circle with a 4 in parentheses. That means that the 4th out of the 7 student outcomes listed in criterion 3 would be achieved if your students achieved that learning outcome. Similarly, the rainbow colored UN SDG symbol is also at the end of those student outcomes that identify with UN SDG number 12 in particular. All of the student learning outcomes identified in the framework are aligned with all of the UN SDGs generally, but specifically we identified all of the core and advanced learning outcomes that are aligned with UN SDG number 12 because it most closely relates to engineering and product design. As I mentioned before, we did some mapping to Bloom's taxonomy. So every learning outcome in the framework is mapped to Bloom's taxonomy, and there's a symbol that indicates high, medium, or low, which maps to the 6 different categories of Bloom's taxonomy. And so you can see for every learning outcome, there'll be a triangle, and it will tell you which level of Bloom's taxonomy you would achieve if your students achieve that learning outcome. So the framework, as I said, was originally launched in 2020. We revised it and relaunched it in December of 2022. And then almost as soon as we launched the framework, frankly, people started saying to us, this is so awesome, this is so great, but how do we integrate sustainability-focused learning outcomes? You've given us all the outcomes, how do we do it? So we tried to rise to the challenge, and in 2023, we've actually launched 3 different how-to teaching companion guides. And I'm going to go through each one of those quickly now. So the 3 guides are the Comprehensive Guide to Teaching Core Learning Outcomes, the Quick Start Activity Guide, and our newly launched 13 step-by-step ideas for integrating sustainability into core engineering courses guide. So the first of the guide, the Comprehensive Guide to Teaching Core Learning Outcomes, again, there's the QR code if you wanted to download that directly. It outlines specific learning activities and key resources for each of the core learning outcomes for each of the 9 topic areas within the framework. And I'm going to just jump over and show you an example. So this is the guide. And there's, an introduction here. There's a table of contents, and along the side of the booklet, as same with the other 2 guides, you can jump to any part of any topic area within the guide that aligns with the framework. So for example, here we have under design topic area, you can see that there are, I'll go to the front of it. You can see that there is going to be a core learning outcome that's listed. And you can see here example of this will achieve the high Bloom's taxonomy level. And you can also see that by achieving this framework learning outcome, you would achieve ABET student outcome number 2, and it would also align with a UN SDG number 12. And we give some integration examples here. So we specifically say what you can do in your classroom. You can list these 5 natural materials and 5 industrial materials. There's resources in reference 2024, and all the references are in the back of this guide. In fact, a lot of people just use the guide to rip the resources from it, and we're happy to share all those resources. They're all hyperlinked in here, so it's easy to use. And then it also says to refer to material selection examples in the Quick Start activity guide, which I'll get to in a minute. But just to show you the reference, so again, for each one of the core learning outcomes within the framework, we have examples of what you can do to bring into your classroom to achieve that learning outcome. So for all the different 9 topic areas. So in the reference section, you can see all of these documents here, all these resources that you can hyperlink to and reference, and to bring this information into your classroom. So that is the comprehensive guide. The next guide that I want to introduce you to is the Quick Start activity guide. And again, here's the QR code if you want to download that directly. Again, it's found on our resources webpage on the EOP website as well. With the Quick Start activity guide, it is really meant to be more of a Cliff Notes version of the comprehensive guide. We realized that the framework, it's a lot. There's 93 student learning outcomes, 47 of which are core. So that within the comprehensive guide, we're giving 47 examples of how to integrate sustainability into your classroom. And so we wanted to give something that was maybe a little bit easier of a first foray into bringing sustainability into classrooms. So we created the Quick Start activity guide, which actually gives just one example of a core learning outcome to integrate into your classroom. So again, I'll jump over to the Quick Start guide to show you what it looks like. Here's the cover. And again, it's the same sort of setup as the past guide that I showed you. Everything is hyperlinked again. But for example, with systems thinking, this is the core learning outcome that was chosen from the suite of core learning outcomes under the topic area of systems thinking. Again, you can see the Bloom's taxonomy here, the ABET mapping symbol, but then it dives in very deeply to what you can specifically do with your students in your classrooms, and it tells you how long it will take. So here's a quick activity that's only going to take 6 minutes to do. Here's an activity that would take 2 to 4 hours to do, and all the resources that you need to do that. We also map what, if you achieve this, if you do this work within your classroom, it would also automatically help you achieve the environmental impact assessment core learning outcome here listed below. And this, we go through this for each one of the different topic areas. We dive into a specific learning activity that you can do in your classroom. So it's really meant to be, like I mentioned before, sort of a Cliff's Note version to really help people get their first integration, their first test to wade into the waters of bringing sustainability into their classrooms. So that's the Quick Start guide. And then finally, the third guide that we released this year, actually just in October, was really exciting. It was kind of done a little bit differently. We did it in preparation and in partnership with the American Society for Engineering Education, or ASEE, and it was co-created by 94 interdivisional town hall participants. So the interdivisional town hall is an event, a session that happens at the ASEE conference each year. And myself, Cindy Cooper, and Michael Milligan, the CEO of ABET, were so honored to have the opportunity to have part of that session to introduce the EOP resources. And what we did in that is actually challenge the audience members to work with us to develop examples of how you can bring sustainability into core engineering courses. And so this guide actually it provides 13 step-by-step ideas of how to integrate sustainability into core engineering courses. So I'll just show you that one quickly. Again, it has the same sort of setup. Oh, this is really big. I'll just skim through it here. So same setup, but in this case, what happens is, so for this case in systems thinking, the course description, the course title would be statics or static systems. So a core engineering course. They're saying which level would be useful at, so the 200 level. and the course description. So here's the course description that the audience members gave. And it's what they used was systems thinking core learning outcome number 3. And this is from the EOP framework. Again, here's our mapping to Bloom's taxonomy. Here's our mapping to ABET student outcomes. And then they give you an integration example of how to do this within the specific statics course, how to bring sustainability into it and achieve this systems thinking core learning outcome. It's a 1 to 3 hour learning activity. They describe, how you can do it as a group or in-class activity. They provide resources, which are hyperlinked here. And so this goes through 13 different examples. And they touch on all 9 different topic areas. So we really hope, these are all, like I said, newly released this year. We're really hoping that they will be useful to anybody who's interested in bringing sustainability into their courses. And we would love feedback on the framework or any of these guides. So please do feel free to contact us if you do use them. Provide us your feedback. Our documents are living documents. We do listen to our stakeholders. So please challenge us to improve them. So the second approach of the 3 different approaches is really to support faculty change efforts. So we have 2 major programs that I'm going to tell you about. The first was the EOP pilot grant program, and that's the one I mentioned earlier that ran from 2020 to 2022. There were grants given up to $40,000 each to each of the different institutions, the 5 different institutions, and they had 2 years, as I mentioned, to use this funding and integrate the EOP framework. We chose a diversity of schools. They were all R1 schools. We had 1 minority serving institution. We chose them for a diversity of regions, size, and disciplines, and also a diversity of strategy. Some were looking at training faculty, some were looking at integration into a large intro engineering course, whereas some were looking at scaffolding throughout their program. The impact overall from that program is that 61 courses were modified. We nearly 6,000 students were reached. 80 faculty were trained in using the framework, and you can actually find a pilot program synopsis on our EOP website if you're interested in hearing more about or learning more about what the results were from that work. We also have been working in collaboration with ASEE, and we launched a EOP mini grant program in 2022. So we've had 1 cohort that's gone through this program already. They had 7 months and only $8,000 each school. There were 13 schools, 5 of which were MSIs, and they did a final poster presentation and an online symposium in January of this year. And you can visit the ASEE mini grant program website to review the video and posters and learn about what we've done specifically. But the impact of just this small amount of money and this short time was that over 30 courses were modified or created, nearly 2,000 students were reached, and nearly 50 faculty learned how to use the framework. We've launched cohort number 2. They're in the midst of working right now. And one thing I will share about the EOP mini grant program that's kind of special is that there's a community of practice. They meet a few times throughout the year as a big group as well. Each of the different institutional teams has an EOP mentor. So they get to meet with them one-on-one, which really has accelerated the uptake of the framework and really the uptake of integration of sustainability into courses. We have, and there will be an online public symposium again in 2024. So if that's of interest to you, please stay tuned. Cohort number 3 has just launched. So the application period is open and we're accepting up to 14 schools. So if you're interested in applying for this, please go ahead and go to the ASEE mini grant program website. You'll see the application, and the deadline to apply is January 10th. So really quickly, just a little bit about something we're trying that's very new, and we're not sure if this will continue. It's, again, a sort of another experiment, but we're calling them EOP institutionalization grants. So we're giving different institutions up to $200,000 over 3 years to pilot to really pilot an Engineering for One Planet program. So far, we have about 10 schools involved, and all of those schools have gone through the mini grant program already, or were an EOP pilot school. So we know what they can do, what kind of support that they already have, and what they've tried to do, and what they've accomplished. And we want to see them expand this across their institution. So move from singular courses across programs, across disciplines. About a third of them are R1 institutions and 4 are MSIs. And they're all using unique strategies to expand EOP throughout their organization. For example, one school is focused on assessment and another is focused on developing an online national faculty training in sustainability. So what have we learned so far from giving out this money and supporting these different faculty change efforts? We've learned that, number one, there's no one way to do this, to integrate sustainability. The mini grant program and pilot schools have had different strategies and different levels of success. We do know now that integrating into existing courses is much easier and has a longer impact and greater longevity rather than standalone elective courses. So we really encourage people to change what already exists, to make some simple modifications to integrate sustainability into courses that already exist, rather than creating a new sustainability minor or new sustainability standalone elective. Those things are wonderful and great, but really to make systems level change, we need to have the integration of sustainability into existing core and required courses for that sustainability and reach. It's really important, if possible, to scaffold learning. So introducing this at the year 1 level all the way through their final year. We also have learned that it's critically important for people to share what they're doing and learning with their peers. That's how we grow together and learn together. We also highly encourage people to use free online resources. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. There's so much out there, including what we have curated and put together. It's critical that the focus isn't only on sustainability focused skills such as environmental impact assessment. It's also important for students to learn professional and leadership skills such as communication and teamwork and critical thinking. We also have found that faculty mentorship or community of practice types of support have been really effective. And we also note that capturing KPIs along the way is really important to measure our impact. So our third approach, interrelated approach, is activating and supporting collaboration. And our main way of doing that is that we launched an EOP volunteer action network in 2021. And we did this because we know that no single organization or intervention can transform all of engineering education. And we also were hearing from people that they wanted to be involved and they didn't know how, and they're already doing this work at their schools, but they need to have sort of partners in crime. They want to be with peers that share their mindsets and hopes for change in engineering education. As I mentioned, it's a volunteer action network, so no one is getting paid except the manager of the network. And all the work is project-based. So the network comes together, they have self-interest, they're self-motivated to propose projects and work on things that are of interest to them. Currently, we have over 70 participants, and we hopefully will be expanding that sometime next year. So stay tuned if you're interested in joining that. Again, it's cross sectors, regions, backgrounds, lived experiences of our participants. And we just had our 5th convening, our 2nd in-person convening, and that was in Arizona. And it was delightful to be there in person and to meet up again. Other collaboration efforts that we're undertaking is one that we're so excited about, and I can't tell you all the details of it yet, but ABET and the Lemelson Foundation have just launched an EOP Innovation in Sustainability Award. I can't tell you how much money will be given out for the prize, but it is a cash prize. It's meant for STEM and ABET accredited programs. It's for individuals or organizations, and the application will be opening soon. So please stay tuned to what ABET is doing, or you can sign up for our newsletter and you'll find out more about it. But as I mentioned earlier, a long time ago in the conversation, we do recognize that recognition and awards are important to make change, to really shine a light on those are influencing systems change. So this is our foray into doing that. Another thing that we're working on is, and I can't say a whole lot about it at this point, but we're really excited about it, that NSF and the Lemelson Foundation are in partnership now on engineering education sustainability research. So stay tuned for what that might mean in the future. We have extensive collaboration with professional engineering societies some of which I've listed below. I mentioned the ASEE mini grant program as an example. Some other things we're working on that are maybe a little less known. We've been participating in what is called the Sustainability Toolkit. It's in collaboration with the United Kingdom's Engineering Professors Council with support from Siemens. And we're mapping the EOP framework to the United Kingdom's AHEP standards, which are kind of like ABET, but for the UK. This sustainability toolkit will be launched in March 2024. We've also been working with the American Society for Civil Engineering on this project called Shaping the Future of Engineering Education. It's been funded this whole year by the United Engineering Foundation, and a report that we've been working on is due in December of this year. And we're also working with Villanova to translate the EOP framework, and we will be working to translate the other guides into Spanish as a start. So closing up my presentation so we can get to the conversation and questions, which I'm really excited about. Just know that your voice and your actions make a difference. You're not alone, and everyone is welcome to join the EOP initiative. So please join us. Here are 5 ways that you can take immediate action to get involved. Number 1, you can download, use, and share our free online teaching resources. So the EOP framework, the 3 how-to teaching guides that I shared with you. You can tell your peers about them. Like I said before, we'd absolutely love your feedback. You can apply for the EOP mini grant program. Again, the deadline for that is January 10th. And you can follow us. A simple thing to do is follow us, our Engineering for One Planet page on LinkedIn. That's where you can hear about anything new coming down the pike, grants, resources, events, that sort of thing. Or you can also, or you can sign up for our EOP newsletter. And we don't bombard you. We just, we send it out about quarterly. And really, it's just about events and grant opportunities and other resources and things like that. You can also become a signatory. So if you scan that QR code or go to our website, we would love to hear that you're in alignment with us, that you're interested in saying that and standing up and saying that sustainability integration in engineering education is important. So please join us that way. So with that, I just want to say thank you again. Thank you so much for your patience and time. It's been a delight to be here. I can't wait to get into the conversation. If you're interested in connecting with me specifically, you can find me on LinkedIn. If you wanted to just touch base with Engineering for One Planet, you can contact us at info@engineeringforoneplanet.org.
Thank you, Cindy. That's fantastic. I think Stephanie should be coming back in here as well. What I might ask, maybe if we stop sharing the screen, then I'll make the 3 of us a little bit bigger for folks to be able to see us engage. So first of all, I'd like to say on behalf of the Academy, thank you once again to ABET for sponsoring. And Cindy, thank you for being here for this incredibly informative webinar. Awesome, awesome, awesome. We got a lot of questions that have come in. I know Stephanie and I have got some things that we want to ask. And so as a co-moderator, I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie and allow her the first opportunity to engage with you. Stephanie.
Great. I actually am going through the questions, and I did notice there's actually a question that I think we both can answer, Cindy. It's for ABET. And the question is, which student learning outcome is sustainability integrated in ABET, or is it cross-commission? So it is not harmonized in the student outcomes. But we do have and I think 3 of the 4 commissions, section 5, and 2 of them, and please don't quote me on all the numbers. I should know that I know some of this by heart and not all of it, but that it is incorporated into must consider the impact of engineering solutions. So we're not necessarily designating. And then Cindy, you can probably answer a little bit more on some of the connections that you all made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Sorry, I won't do that. But in the EOP framework, in particular, there is a whole introduction related to ABET and the student outcomes. There are 7 listed in the criteria number 3, and 4 out of those 7 actually mention environmental and/or sustainability implications of engineering. So it doesn't specifically say the word sustainability, but it is very clear in those 4 different student outcomes that by integrating social and environmental sustainability, you would achieve these student outcomes. But again, if you look at the EOP framework, it's highly detailed how that integration works, and then again how it's mapped to each of the student learning outcomes within the framework. So hopefully that answers your question. I wish I had them listed in front of me, and if you want, I can pull up the framework in a minute and show you.
But that makes sense to me as a person who's both like written the self-study reports and read the self-study reports. So for those that are faculty that are speaking the ABET secret sauce language, apparently the mapping is there in the EOP. So read and follow mapping, and we're smart people as faculty. We can figure that out. So a question that I want to kind of leverage off of that one and kind of push into, in a space, because the Academy, of course, is also made up of practitioners as well as educators, right? And so one of the questions that we saw people talking about is this kind of threefold, right? So there's environmental, but then there's also that kind of like that social and economic. So if you can speak to how that cuts across those different areas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people have probably heard of the triple bottom line or the 3 Ps, people, planet, prosperity. Absolutely. You can't run a business without making money. We know that. And so when we're talking about industry's role in this, they obviously need to think about the economic aspects of what they're doing, what they're producing, what they're building. But in with that, we think is fundamentally important is what are the sustainability and the social and environmental impacts along the way of also making money and producing whatever you're doing. I'm not sure if that answers that question very well, but they are just, I guess the point being that they're all interrelated and completely integrated. And so what we're seeing, when I think about what the work that the Lemelson Foundation does, as well as VentureWell, which I used to work for, really focused on innovation and entrepreneurship and bringing that into, startups, bringing that into higher education. But really what we started to see is that the focus was always on the economic bottom line. Could this company get off the ground? Are they making enough profits for the shareholders? And so we took a pause and said, okay, yes, this is fundamentally important, but from the very beginning, we really need to be thinking about what's the environmental impact of what you're doing on the planet? Is it going to cost us more later? What are the social implications of what you're doing? So really that's where the Engineering for One Planet initiative was born, is that the Lemelson Foundation was like, okay, for almost 30 years, we've been supporting the launch of these startups, but have they thought about the impacts that they're having socially and environmentally? Does that answer your question?
No, I love that. That's a great. Now I'm going to ask a really, really specific, particular question, and then I'll turn it back over to Stephanie. But so then what do people use the money for the mini grants for?
Great question.
No, because we're nitty gritty, right? So, end of the day, we're like, so I get some money. What can I use it for? So
actually, it's quite unrestricted. A lot of funds I know you can't use for certain things, so it's quite unrestricted. But we really, what we're hoping people will do with the money, and what most people do with the money, and it's only $8,000. We're hoping it will offset teaching costs. So, for example, if instead of to buy people out of teaching, so if they were, for example, going to teach in the summer, maybe they can use this money and no longer need to teach in the summer, and instead focus on revising an existing course so that it integrates sustainability. So a lot of people have been using it to buy out a course, like one course load sort of thing, or sometimes they use it to hire people like an intern, a student, maybe a student worker, to help them, you know, to modify a class or to do some research for them, to help them. A lot of people have to go through IRB. So, you know, they need help with developing surveys in order to assess what they're doing. And so that can help them too. So really a lot of people use it for basically personnel funding, but you could use it for supplies, for example, like say, for example, you have a class that's on material selection or prototyping or something like that. And you say, hey, I really want to shift over to doing some 3D printing with alternative materials. I need a new 3D printer, or I need the raw material for the 3D printer. You can use that money for that if you want.
Makes
So
sense.
it's really
Makes sense. No, that's very helpful. I appreciate that. Stephanie?
Great. That was a great question. I was curious myself. So we do have a question in the Q&A, Cindy, about software use. Is there anything in the EOP that talks about any different type of software that's open, or any suggestions, or how do you tie that in?
Just to clarify the question, so there's kind of two things I'm thinking of. Number one, we do talk about within the EOP framework, there are student learning outcomes that focus on coding and software development. So if it's kind of that angle, that's in there, and you can absolutely apply it to computer programming, engineering programs or courses. So that's one thing. But if you're asking for what computer programs to use, what computer software to use, absolutely, there are so many out there. For example, if you're looking for life cycle analysis software, that's something that a lot of people are asking about. You know, there are a lot of companies out there. I know that ANSYS is one company that has really great student software, LCA software, and they have, you know, support to bring educational software into different institutions, and depending on your budgets, it's kind of a sliding scale. I don't want to talk too much about what they offer because I don't work for ANSYS, but that is one company. But actually, there are other things that you can do too. Like, say, for example, you can't afford a license for all of your students, or your program doesn't have that capacity right now. You know, through our resources, our free online resources, and it's mentioned in the guide, there is a website that VentureWell curates that's called Tools for Design and Sustainability. It's linked many, many times in our resources, so you won't have trouble finding it. But within that within that website, it's basically a green design textbook in electronic form. And one of the quote unquote chapters is around life cycle assessment. And you can actually go on that website, dive in, there's videos, there's student course work examples. And also there's a free online Excel spreadsheet that is up to date that you can actually do really rough life cycle analysis work. So if this is just an introduction to your students and you don't want to overcomplicate it and you can't afford a license, or you don't need to go down the whole rabbit hole of full LCA software, you can use that Excel spreadsheet and your students can see right away, like if they change this, you know, is it virgin steel or virgin raw materials, or are we using recycled materials? What kind of difference does it make in that life cycle analysis output? So hopefully that answers your question, whoever asked. But yeah, if I didn't, please feel free to contact me and I can help you.
Well, and I know we've got some more that are going to be kind of drilling down from a faculty perspective, and I'll defer to Stephanie to ask a few more of those, but maybe let me jump in and ask one that was kind of coming at it from also kind of the top down, the industry perspective as well, right? So this is a really cool, EOP is this really cool ecosystem that is there for doing all these fun things. So what are the opportunities to get engaged with, you know, if you're in the C-suite, or we're the academy, or we have a sister foundation that works with, are there ways for us to plug in? Can we essentially run a mini grant and encourage our own members to do this sort of thing? Speak to a little bit more about how you're leveraging some of these partnerships and how we might be able to help scale it up. If we're interested in it from a corporate standpoint and we want to engage, or we're interested in it from a membership organization and we want to engage, Are there any limits, or are there any ideas, or what would be some thoughts there?
Gosh, first of all, definitely call me if you're interested in doing something to scale. I mean, we're all ears. We're really open to ideas. We have been having conversations now for over 7 years with different professional societies, with different industry members. And so we just sort of feel out what's their capacity, what's their interest level, what is most motivating to them. How can we help them achieve their goals? And we figure things out along the way. A couple of examples are the thing I mentioned with Siemens. We're involved working with Siemens to produce the sustainability toolkit. So, is it resources that your constituents need? Is it training that your own staff needs? And so we've been working with Boeing to try and figure out, like, how can we support the training of their existing engineers? So not students coming out of college, but instead they have engineers that they want to retool or retrain or improve their knowledge related to sustainability. So we've helped to facilitate some trainings in that way. And that's something that we're hoping to expand with faculty training as well, related to the work that we're doing with Villanova. What other things? So there's a lot of other ways. So industry has potentially a lot of influence over engineering education if they're involved with industry advisory boards, like through professional associations, or if they're helping related to what's happening with curriculum committee, or they may be part of a board that influences what's happening in an engineering department. So what I would say, like, whether or not you're involved with Engineering for One Planet or not, your voice can be loud and very influential if you're talking to the right people. We absolutely need more industry CEOs from C-suite. That would be amazing. Top engineers, people that have powerful positions in engineering, if they're sharing what their needs are for their business across industries, with higher ed, it can really help to influence how curriculum gets changed, because ultimately, students are actually paying clients to universities, and they graduate, and it's important for universities to say that their students get hired. And so they want to prepare and train their graduates to be most hireable for industry. So really there's that bridge there that's super important. I'm trying to think of other ways. One is, like, with the professional associations, we're really looking for opportunities to collaborate. As I mentioned before, we entered into this collaboration with ASEE. Lemelson Foundation actually provided the funding for ASEE to launch the mini grant program. We would love to think about other ways to work with professional associations. And also we're looking for other funders. So if you happen to be from industry and you have, control over purse strings, and you want to fund something like a mini grant program, maybe related to your specific discipline of engineering, we would be all ears around that. We do know the mini grant,
some X Prize kind of thing, or like in that space. Yeah.
Yeah, we're really open to a lot of ideas. So hopefully that's helpful. I mean,
No, that's great.
The bottom line is that please talk to us. We want to hear from you.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Cindy. Thanks, Stephanie.
So we do have a question. So the EOP is focused primarily on environmental sustainability, but there's a question here about the economic and social components of sustainability that are in the SDGs, and how are they being addressed by EOP?
Yeah, that's great. So actually, we're not just focused on environmental sustainability anymore. I will say that when we originally launched the framework in 2020, it really did have a heavy focus on environmental sustainability. But after, collecting all of that feedback to revise the framework, which we launched in 2022, you'll see that there is a heavy integration of social sustainability, including economic. I mean, one of the topic areas is responsible business and economy. And one of the topic areas is social responsibility. So of the 9, those are 2 topic areas that include many student learning outcomes that are entirely focused on social and economic. Also, I would love to just share again, related to the professional and leadership competencies, we have, communication and teamwork and critical thinking are 2 other topic areas within the 9. So a large proportion actually of the framework is dedicated to what we would really not consider to be primarily environmental sustainability.
No, this is great. I know that we've got an audience that's also been here with us for a while, so I'm kind of sensitive to that. Cindy, this has been fantastic. Stephanie, thank you so much to ABET for doing this. Thanks for everybody that threw questions in the Q&A. So bottom line, it seems to me like, reach out to you, Cindy, because you are all ears for hearing people being interested and engaged. So if you want to share screen, and we'll put yours up there again so that people have that, and then we'll advance through to the end where we'll do our normal outro for this. But before we get to that, I just wanted to say thanks again to ABET for being a sponsor for this amazing webinar. And Stephanie, thanks for taking time to join us as co-moderator. We really appreciate it. Cindy, awesome. I think it's maybe the slide before that had your contact information. Maybe we'll do that one up so that anybody wants to grab your phone or do a screen capture. Here's a way to get in touch on LinkedIn as well as, and I had been, Cindy, I don't know if you had noticed, but I had been peppering the discussion board throughout with some links to things to try to help as well. So I think folks have been able to connect. So with that, I will ask if you'll go on to our last slide and we'll cover our conclusion here. All right. Well, thanks everybody for your questions and answers today. We really want to appreciate and offer our thanks to ABET and to our speaker, Cindy Anderson, for sharing your knowledge. If you have additional questions on this topic, please reach out and Cindy would be able to get in touch and be happy to speak with you. On behalf of Marissa Waterman, who normally handles this for the Academy, we appreciate you being here with us today. We have several webinars planned in the near future. You can always go to aaees.org/events and reserve your spot for a future webinar. And just a reminder, if you're not yet an Academy member and you're considering joining the Academy, please email marissa@waterman to be able to discuss membership options. And last but not least, PDH certificates for this event will be sent out shortly. That's all for now. We enjoyed being with you all today. Thank you so much and have a great day.